This is the last video for Patrick Lecture 54, which is a Q&A session. I selected it because it highlighted elements of pride, self-will, and fear, and also because of this last section, week 4, which touched on some random items that I believe can add to one's understanding of various concepts. Now, I featured 2 questions in this section about free will, where again, I was fascinated by the guide saying that, yes, some spirits aren't ready and they have to come along anyway. They have to incarnate. It sounded like we know what's best, which is so easily interpreted as we're going to take over their free will. And this is how it's often read. You don't have free will because spirit can make you incarnate. However, with more understanding of the lectures and the limitations of the guide's language, this is my current understanding. As explained by the guide in this answer, spirits are no different than a human child. A child cannot stay a child physically. Growth will happen. Growth will happen because life cannot stand still. Therefore, just because a spirit says, I won't incarnate, I won't grow, doesn't mean they're not growing. And that growing can actually be more painful than growing with the help of tools such as coming to this planet. And so, again, my interpretation is that the guide is describing how spirit may act as a guardian, and the older, wiser, more mature spirits that are assigned to this being may decide, we're going to do what's good for you. We're going to do what is good for you in who you are destined to become, because in spirit there is no time. And therefore, if you look at a spirit, you can see their potential. You can see what they were destined to become, even if they're far from that. You see past, present, and future all at once. Nothing is hidden. And so a guardian spirit would look at this stubborn spirit who is trapped in their own negativity and say, we're going to do something that will help. Technically, it may seem like it violates free will, but it honors a deeper free will. It frees the will so that it can grow. And that's how I read this. It is very common to read into given sentences in the lectures, something rather fundamentalist. The guide says this, so this is what the Patrick philosophy is. And the joke is the guide says a lot of things. There are a lot of pages, a lot of words in the compendium of Patrick lectures. And to get a full flavor of a concept, you need to do a lot of reading and a lot of studying. So that question intrigued me because it seemed to elicit a simplistic response, and yet I felt into the deeper reality of the spiritual growth of a being and how you would help a being who didn't even know what was good for themselves. So that was one element of this. Another element is that it is difficult for mankind to accept that they are not top of the food chain in the spirit world as well, because we are top of the food chain on the planet Earth. There's a little pride involved there. Now, this entire section is labeled ego, vanity, spiritual pride. And this is sometimes hard to see because it can be justified. I should be proud. I am the leader. I am the best. I am the biggest, etc. The trick is all these may rely upon elements that have no significant spiritual reality. Just because you're the biggest person in the room does not mean anything about your spiritual reality, your value, your strengths, your weaknesses. It just means that you're manifesting as a large being. Just because you manage to manifest as a human being does not mean that you are kinder than a dog. You may be crueler than the dog. But as a human being, you have more potential to recognize what is causing your cruelty, what is activating it, what is motivating it, and to deal with it. You also have more potential to deny that it exists in the first place and to claim through outer circumstances that you're fine. So, spiritual humility is necessary to do this work, as in reading the guide statements. Another section that fascinated me was how the guide spoke of these spirits who are plucked against their will and thrown into a human incarnation. And I'm inserting my own words here, that they would be a little grumpy, that they might be a little irritated, spiritually irritated, by being forced to manifest growth that they wanted to hide. And so how I translate that is grumpy spirits may manifest as grumpy human beings. And the guide actually invites us to consider that some people who exercise a lot of negativity, a lot of resistance, who act out a lot, may be such grumpy spirits who still don't realize that this is an opportunity and see this as this incarnation, being a human being, as an imposition, something that they could avoid, that they wanted to avoid. So when I was a kid, the phrase was, I didn't ask to be born. And one of my major, it's like a reversal that I experienced in path work was realizing that I had asked to be born, that I had stood in line to be born, that I had filled out paperwork to be born, that I had had to come up with a plan, and I had to submit it, I'd have to get approved, that being born is not an accident, that you don't literally get plucked by accident out of the firmament and dragged onto the planet Earth. However, that's what it might feel like to a spirit who was insisting, basically throwing a temper tantrum and saying, I won't grow. It may feel like that happened. Um, so another element that I brought up here is asking for spiritual contact. The joke version is, if you pray, your prayer may be answered, but the answer may be no. And we have a way as human beings of claiming that if our prayer had been heard because we believe in the prayer and we believe it should have been answered, that if it wasn't answered, it wasn't heard. Because we don't want to consider the possibility that the answer was no. We don't want to consider, once again, spiritual pride and vanity. We don't want to consider that we asked for something that we don't yet deserve, or we might not be able to handle yet, even though we think we can. So in asking for spiritual help, the emphasis is on the asking, that to ask shows a certain humility. It's not ask and you shall receive. It's ask and an energy will open up for you. An energy that may include reception of whatever is offered. That would depend on what is in your highest good in the moment. Again, humility to accept what seems to be in our highest good in the moment. A section on no accidents, coincidences, or mistakes. This is a mantra that I practiced for a decade, 2 decades, 3, that I still practice today. I have a tendency in my human thinking process to say, oops, I made a mistake. This was an accident. And it is not easy to see the spiritual meaning of everything. It's not easy to understand why spilling milk on the floor has a purpose when you just have to spend time bothering to clean it up. But the way I work with it is I think in terms of, for instance, losing my keys, that if I can't find my keys and I can't leave the house, that there's a possibility that I wasn't supposed to leave the house yet. And they didn't know how to communicate that to me in a way I would understand or agree to. So they managed to help me forget where I put my keys. They did not change where I put my keys. but they can influence how I remember and distract me so that I lose track of that memory, can't find my keys, leave the house 5 minutes late. This is how I started to work on building my faith that leaving the house 5 minutes late had a lesson in it. I might not fully understand that lesson, but I wanted to be willing to believe that there was a lesson, that either there was an accident 5 minutes down the road that I've managed to avoid that I'll never know about. There will be no proof that being 5 minutes late saved my life. That being 5 minutes late could generate irritation in me that would bring out other things that need to be brought out. I find that unpleasant. I don't wish to air my grievances. I don't wish for my impatience to be displayed to other people. But it's important because it would show me that I do have impatience and that I can't always manage it. So this could be very important for my spiritual growth and could be a result of being late, being stressed, and having this conflict inside of must be on time or I'm a bad person, etc. And it brings something out. So my invitation is to practice seeing everything that happens as having a spiritual purpose, not necessarily a pleasant one, but a purpose. And considering saying something like, I'd like to be open to that purpose. And I understand that I may not be become fully conscious of it. In other words, I won't be in on the joke. I won't be in on the scheme, but I'm still a participant. And I'm willing to participate and trust and see where this goes. It changes an attitude. Try it, see how it works. The last section was another, I call them commercials for spiritual nourishment. You need spiritual nourishment. When we get hungry, we tend to reach for junk food. We reach for whatever's handy. Spiritually, when we're malnourished, we will reach for the equivalent of junk food. You need to stay nourished. Nourished enough so that you won't act erratically or extremely, so that you won't grab things, so that you will consider where your spiritual work is going, what you're embracing, what you're spending your time on. Your spiritual nourishment matters as much as any other form of nourishment. And this leads into, although it's not highlighted here, leads into spiritual hygiene. Spiritual hygiene means cleaning yourself up of the bits and pieces and fluff that you collect. I would like this and I would like that, and I'm irritated here, and all the bits and pieces that accumulate during the day. Now, I use the example, I have a robot vacuum, and I am always stunned by the end of 3 days what it collects. I have to empty it twice a week. Theoretically, I live alone, my house is clean, but it still collects stuff. I don't know where this stuff comes from. But it's detritus that I can't see until it's collected. And so there are two aspects to spiritual hygiene. One is cleanliness. So when I wash in the shower, I don't expect to see dirt flowing down the drain necessarily. I have faith that I'm rinsing off layers that may not be visible to me, but that are still important to be cleansed. Spiritual hygiene is the same way. The intent, the decision to engage in any kind of process of spiritual hygiene by itself is a form of spiritual hygiene. It's also a form of asking for help. So, rolled a whole bunch of miscellaneous stuff into this last week. I hope you read the lecture. I hope you enjoy it. And thanks for listening.